A and B.
Yes, Mayor and Council, thank you very much. If you don't mind, can we go to 7B first, and then we'll honor Councilwoman Wright after that. I'm going to ask Director Carroll, if you don't mind coming up. We're going to do our monthly Boerne Listens, or the City of Boerne Listens to the community survey responses. This will be our third episode of this conversation. And we're going to talk about mobility this evening. As you guys know, we conducted this survey at the end of last year. We had just under 1,600 completed surveys. 75% of those were city residents, another 25% out in the greater Boerne community, out in the county. The survey measured all kinds of aspects of the services we provide, satisfaction, what's important to the residents and non-residents, and safety, security, mobility, and so forth. Next. In the mobility questions, they were lumped in with the infrastructure and utilities, and so I kind of grayed out or whited out the areas that were specifically to the utilities. And so you see before you the items that were surveyed that related to mobility. You can see what was most important and then what was the satisfaction of each of those. No surprise here, as has been as we've received in the past surveys in the last 5 years. Mobility is top concern in a lot of areas, and also with some of the greatest dissatisfaction. We hear it all the time. We experience it all the time. In fact, today, just this afternoon, Director Carroll and I were meeting with TxDOT officials, 3 different TxDOT officials, talking about intersections and roads and their plans and what's going on. And Director Carroll's going to speak more to that here in a minute. But as you know, after we asked all these satisfaction rating questions, we then asked a question, hey, what one thing could more specifically, if you'll advance, Chaz, we asked, what is one single most important mobility improvement you believe the city needs to look at or address? And you can see those category breakdowns with the percentage. About half of the 1,600 respondents of the survey participated in this, a little less than half participated in giving us feedback. And these are the different categories. And so what we'd like to do, if we go next, we'll just go district by district and actually read some quotes by the comments that we received, and then we'll turn it over to Director Carroll to give an informative presentation about this. So, Mayor Pro Tem.
At first, I'm really happy that roundabouts are District 1. Improve congested intersections using roundabouts or other alternatives. Please put in the roundabouts that have been planned already.
All right, District 2.
Using traffic light synchronization to help alleviate rush hour traffic. There needs to be more time allotted for turning lanes during high volume times. Stoplight optimization. Sometimes at lower flow times of day, you'll catch red lights with no cross traffic.
And District 3, who has?
I have District 3. Yeah, so the jaywalking problem on Main Street is so dangerous. No more jaywalking on Main Street, or do not allow cars to park on Main Street.
District 4.
Need traffic signal at intersection of Swope and Oak Park. More traffic signals where 4-way stop signs now exist.
District 5. Many of the city-owned streets are in bad shape. Too many Boerne streets have been neglected for too long. Fixing roads. Potholes are connecting to potholes.
From the community conversations outside of the city limits, minimize traffic through downtown. It's a beautiful downtown ruined by traffic noise. Need an outside route to get around Champion area to the other side of town. It's absurd it takes an hour to get to the other side.
Okay, so that is just a very high-level summary of all the comments. You guys have read through those. There's a lot more to it. And so I'm going to ask Director Carroll to provide some very informative information, very comprehensive. Feel free to ask questions whenever, interject within that presentation. Jeff.
Evening again. So just to start off with a big overall of the city street system. The city street department, we maintain 83 miles of roadway. When we internally talk about that, we use 232 lane miles. Some roads are 3 lanes, some lanes are 4 lanes. So we use lane miles in our math of how we maintain everything. That's a lot of roads that we have to maintain. But with my maintenance hat on, I'm very happy that TxDOT maintains IH10, obviously, but they also maintain Main Street, West Bend area over by HEB, River Road and Blanco Road, and actually a portion of Sisterdale. I didn't put this on here, Sisterdale Highway. So TxDOT maintains all of those roads. So if there's anything on any of those roads, TxDOT is paying to fix those, not City Street Department. Also with the traffic signals of all those roads, the city department, we have 2 traffic signals that we maintain. So Oak Park and Herf and Old San Antonio. So those 2 signals are ours. Kendall County actually has 1 traffic signal that they maintain. Every other traffic signal in the entire county is TxDOT's. So anytime you have a call with TxDOT, which we get frequently, or anyone calls with one of the traffic signals, we're frequently just passing that information on to TxDOT, because most often it is not our signals. Of those 2 signals we do have, we updated them a couple years ago to the most cutting edge radar-based detectors. So the signals work when it detects that there's a car on one of the cross streets. And we have those 2 lights programmed for Herf Road to always be green unless it picks up a detector on one of the cross streets. The city maintains a traffic counting program. We use this, we've been doing this for many years. We use it for all sorts of different things, and you'll hear traffic counts come up a couple more times tonight. Number one, we use it for warrant analysis, and I'll explain that a little further next. We use it also to verify when any new development comes in, they turn in traffic studies. So we have kind of a background count of what traffic counts are, just to make sure it all makes sense. But we also look for changes in traffic patterns. We've been able to see that some roads are increasing with traffic, some roads are staying the same, and we actually have some roads that are decreasing in traffic volumes. So we use those numbers and the increase or decrease in traffic when we try to make decisions on particular roadways. Also, TxDOT does traffic counts. So they actually have 23 locations that they count every single year in the city limits. And those are posted on the city's, the TxDOT's website. So we also will look at our counts versus TxDOT's counts. It's interesting to see the difference, but it's also very interesting to see TxDOT has, in our area, about 20 years of counts in the exact same location. So you can go to their website and you can kind of look back in time. And it's interesting with the COVID years, and you can see other miscellaneous patterns in traffic. We frequently, in the citizen comments, but also our department, we frequently get comments about we want new traffic signals, we want new stop signs, we need more lane striping in certain areas. But really as a city, we follow the policy of wanting to use a warrant for any of those type of things. And warrants are defined in, we call it the MUTCD, but it's the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So this is a ginormous book that the Federal Highway Association puts out. And so the big picture of this book is, so if you're driving around Boerne, the stop signs look the same as San Antonio. If you go to Florida, the stop signs look the same in all the traffic. So it's kind of a nationwide standard of how traffic signals, traffic signs, striping, everything is supposed to look, so drivers don't get confused and keep safe. The main thing, though, is we start chasing more of these federal funding. I mean, it's specifically in the language that we are supposed to be following the MUTCD for everything we do. And it also ties back to one of our strategy maps of using data to make decisions. But the other thing is it makes a constant defensible framework anytime there's a traffic issue. If there is an accident or something like that, if we say, hey, our signs meet certain rules. But also at the same time, there's frequently speeding tickets or no parking tickets or other issues that get thrown out if the stop sign isn't the exact 7 feet off the ground or other things. So again, everything has to follow those rules otherwise to make sure it's legal. When you look at a warrant, you need to look at all sorts of different things. The traffic volume, pedestrian volume, crash history, school crossing data, speeds, and whether the roadway geometry itself. They all kind of get plugged into actual math equations, and then you look at graphs and other things, and it spits out, and it basically spits out a yes-no answer. So you look at this particular location, it has this much traffic, it has this much pedestrian, it needs to be a two-way stop sign, or it needs to be a four-way stop sign, or it needs to be a traffic signal, or you don't have any stop signs at all. If it's enough low volume, it can be that way as well. So it's a very calculated, using data method of determining answers on should we have a stop sign, should we have a traffic signal, should we stripe this road. Continuing with traffic signals, when you do have enough traffic eventually, a traffic signal will be warranted, and that's something in those comments you heard, a couple places we wanted more traffic signals. Typically with new development, the developer is the one putting those traffic signals in. Cost of a traffic signal can vary between $250,000 and $350,000 depending on some of the things you put on with that, with the mast arms and the detectors. And traffic signals also require a dedicated electric service. So sometimes where the traffic signal needs to go, it's complicated to get electric actually over to the traffic signal. And there's annual maintenance required for traffic signals. So again, we only have 2 traffic signals, but right now, the last couple of years, that's been anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 a year to maintain those 2 traffic signals. So think of TxDOT has 27-ish signals in the rest of Boerne. If we had to maintain the rest of those, what that cost potentially would be. For traffic signals, how they work is they most often are based on a 100 to 150 second clock. And so there's a very basic computer in a box in the corner. And so it's just set up that this guy gets so many seconds to go straight, and then this guy gets so many seconds. So it just goes through a program, and that program is based on the traffic volume. So when you set up the signal, you do traffic counts, you project how much the volume is, and you adjust those windows for this signal to work. Frequently what we see in town, especially here at City Hall, our emergency service trucks at the fire station have little things on the top of them that reset the traffic signal when they drive by. So frequently, if you here at this stoplight, I've been stuck several times because a fire truck goes by and it resets the clock and it starts the whole signal all the way through again. But the other time is the signals are based, TxDOT actually has 2 what they call corridors. So Highway 46 East from Main Street East is considered a corridor, and Business 87 Main Street is considered a corridor. And so believe it or not, and sometimes you have to be at the right time of the day with normal traffic. If you get on one of these corridors and you drive the speed limit and you don't get stuck by anyone turning right or left, in theory you'll be able to drive through all the lights and have a green light through every single light. Now the first time you turn on to say Main Street, you probably will hit a red light at the first signal because you're kind of getting into the corridor off time. But then once you get in time, in theory, you should be able to drive through the corridor. So all the signals are connected with clocks, and they all know this one needs to turn green so many seconds after that one. So that's part of that signal timing system. So sometimes, because of that signal timing system, to maintain that green wave of a corridor, the signals will cycle, and you might show up on one of the cross streets, and it might be a red light because it's a green light through. Or at the same time, the cycle will actually flip red sometimes when there's not people on the cross streets. So that's one of the comments is there's no one on the cross streets, but it's because that signals are timed from this signal to that signal to this signal. And that's in a perfect world. So frequently, we don't have a perfect world. We all know that. And obviously, traffic is going to change very much here in, I think, 7 days, 8 days. Our traffic is completely different in the summertime. Our traffic is very affected by the school season. The one thing I wanted to mention too is all of those TxDOT signals, many of them are actually connected to the TransGuide facility in San Antonio by cell phones or communication devices. And TxDOT's actually able to change some of their signals on the fly from the computer systems in San Antonio. So once they have new timing or if they see an issue, like some of the lights closer to the interstate, they actually have cameras and lights, and they can change the timing on the fly if they see an issue happening. Not all of the TxDOT signals have that. And TxDOT actually just last month recounted every traffic signal in town. So we haven't seen an update of what they're changing the timing. But they actually, every couple of years, they come through and count every intersection who's making right, left turns, and they tweak the signals to make sure they're most efficient. And I don't have it in here too, but the signals typically have about 4, some have 5 time periods throughout the day too. So they change, basically there's a morning rush hour, or evening rush hour, sometimes they might have a noon hour. So the computer that's running that time can change based on the time to give this leg more time in the morning, but in the evening, the other leg gets more time. So they can set up that little computer to run differently at different times of the day. We get frequent comments. Roundabouts was one. And when we did the Kendall County Boerne Fair Oaks Transportation Committee, our citizens in that committee wanted us to put roundabouts all over town. And it's something that's in the industry is definitely something that are talked about quite a bit more. And so just looking at the graphic on the right, a normal 4-legged intersection, there's 32 conflict points vehicle to vehicle and 24 vehicle to person. And in a modern roundabout, that's 8 vehicle, 8 person. And the other thing why roundabouts are so safe for bike and pedestrians, in reality, you're only having to look one way. You're not having to look both ways as you're crossing the road, that you're really only having to walk one way. You have the center split island area that you can get across to help keep that distance shorter. Now, the big thing to remember with modern roundabouts is many of the roundabouts you see, New Braunfels downtown, some other places in San Antonio, those are not what we refer to as modern roundabouts. There's definitely been a lot of improvement from some of those old roundabouts to what we call a modern roundabout. They're based on years of design. They have splitter islands so that your pedestrian only really has to cross one lane, and then they're in a safe spot, and then they have to cross one more lane to get to the other side. We're considering roundabouts in many sections in town, and we actually, in our code, when we updated with the UDC, we added several language items and changed some of the rules to make future developments more roundabout friendly. However, roundabouts aren't perfect for every single intersection. So roundabouts have a warrant analysis too. Sometimes if the legs are just like a minor street and a major street and their traffic volumes are very different, sometimes the roundabouts won't potentially work. One of the comments, and one that we get frequently, is about downtown pedestrian safety. So jaywalking came up many times in the survey. Pedestrians walking at unmarked locations downtown is something that's unsafe for pedestrians. It's unsafe for the drivers here kind of in the downtown area. We're actually, as a city, we're reviewing signage and crosswalk visibility. If you remember, that Safe Streets for All grant that we got is going to be specifically studying downtown safety a little bit further. And the big thing we have to remember, though, is many of these improvements to safety for pedestrian crossings could potentially affect and cause a reduction in parking downtown along those parallel parking areas. But the big thing that we need to remember, and to go back to your driver's ed class that many of us forgot by now, is in actuality, pretty much everywhere on Main Street, it's perfectly legal for a person to walk across Main Street. There's certain areas of town between traffic signals that you can actually get a jaywalking ticket, but the vast majority of downtown is perfectly legal for people to walk out and cross the road. It's the vehicle's responsibility to stop for the pedestrians. So that's something that we need to do, and again, going back to that downtown traffic safety study, is how to make it safer, because just because it's legal for you to do it doesn't mean it's safe. So we want to make sure that it's something that comes up with safe, so we might have to look at improving our pedestrian crossings or adding additional crossings to make it more safe for people to cross. Bike and pedestrian safety is something that comes up very frequently in the comments when we reviewed through those. As you might recall, we've been working on the multi-year ADA transition plan. So we're in year 4 of that program. We've identified many locations throughout town to improve curb ramps or make ADA items safer, and we've been slowly developing those into our kind of summertime. We have a summertime sidewalk project that we've been working on, as well as many other sidewalk projects we've worked on the last couple of years. If you recall, we built sidewalks on Rosewood, on Oak Park, on portions of Fry. So there's many sidewalk projects that we've done in the last couple of years, as also going and fixing the areas that we have problems. And we actually have several sidewalks that have been designed, like we have designed and basically plans done and ready, and we're just looking for future funding. And one of the things we did this year in the recent MPO call for projects is we bundled about 6 of our sidewalk projects together and turned it in for a $2.6 million request for funding on the MPO project, which would be a 80-20 split if possible. So street compare, the potholes connecting to potholes, I will bring up, this is not a picture of Boerne, but when I read the comments, this is what I picture in my head our citizens are seeing in town. Maintaining our roads obviously is a constant challenge. We are super excited every time it rains here, but every time it rains we have potholes and other drainage, and water is one of the big issues for pavement repair. So anytime we have water or snow or ice, we end up having potholes. The water gets down, it causes issues. And that's one of the first things we do after a rainstorm is we'll go out, drive around, and look for potholes. And obviously going back to the traffic counts, can't fix everything all at once, so we kind of prioritize based on which roads are the higher volume, traffic value level, and obviously funding. Sometimes it might be a little fix we can go do, sometimes it might be a big fix that we're going to have to come up with a plan to get that fixed. We've talked about it before, but we actually use a method called pavement condition index. So we have My inspectors a couple years ago in COVID, when I was looking for stuff for them to do, they actually physically walked every street in town. That 83 miles I mentioned earlier, they walked it one summer, every street in town with a little measuring device and measured all the cracks in the streets. And then a couple years later, we actually had a truck-mounted system come in and do the same thing, and it took the truck only 2 days, which took my inspectors about a month. But the scores were actually very similar. But we have every street in town graded, and we come up with plans on how we're going to fix a street, obviously based on the scores. It's just like elementary school. 100 is a good street. Brand new street will come in at 100, and we work our way down. If you recall, when we did the street reconstruction projects as part of the bond, we took our 3 worst streets, which are down in the serious and very poor sections, and those were how we picked those streets to completely tear out and rebuild, because those are some of our 3 worst streets. And with the last couple of years, we've increased the street department and funding, as well as we created the slurry seal program and the patching program. And so in 4 years, we've actually gone from a kind of a C average of our streets to a B average in our streets. So here we have our PCI score, and we've increased it every time we do additional road projects. We're increasing that over time. So obviously we want to continue improving that and getting that better every time. But we go and try to find all these potholes, but we actually encourage residents, if they see things, to, obviously we have an app. There's a City of Boerne app that has a street issue that you can report potholes, or you can always call customer service. That'll provide a ticket for our street guys to go find and fix. So obviously there's corrective repairs, as I mentioned, potholes and patching and reconstruction. So those are projects when we have a problem, we have to go fix it. But we also do a lot of preventative maintenance, and so that's the crack seal program. So we actually do that. We try to do that in January, February time when the cracks are actually bigger. The chip seal is we're purchasing materials to buy rocks and oil for that this evening. So that's more of a summertime program that our street department does internally. And then the microsurfacing or the slurry seal. And as I mentioned earlier, we actually just finished that contract yesterday. The contractor's still in town doing some last bit of cleanup. But the slurry seal program we started a couple years ago, and that's been very popular with our residents. I know we've gotten several positive comments about it this year from several people. And so here you can see pictures of crack seal, the slurry seal, and this is the milling and replacing pavement that we did. This is down by the movie theater on Old San Antonio. There were several comments in the citizen survey about our major thoroughfare plan. There's lots of miscommunication on the major thoroughfare plan, but really the major thoroughfare plan guides overall connectivity if a parcel is sold and developed. The city doesn't go build these roads. It works and ties back to the city's future land use plan. It's a formal planning tool that's allowed by state law. So the first major thoroughfare plan we adopted in '74, and it's been updated many times since. Our current plan is 2020, was adopted in 2023 by council. So not only does this provide connectivity for when new developments come in, this defines right-of-way widths based on whether it's arterial or collector. And so when we have new developments come in that are on one of these roadways, even if they, through our rules and our rough proportionality laws, they don't have to build the actual roadway itself. Sometimes that happens. They will dedicate the land. And that's something in roadway connectivity, just sometimes having that land dedicated us for a future roadway connection is a big issue. There were many comments in there about planning, that we need to be doing more planning on how to all these roads and road connectivity. So just in the last 20 years, there's actually been lots of planning. So back in 2005, TxDOT did a big study called the Southern Relief Route Study. In 2007, after that study, a citizen service community was formed called the Thoroughfare Planning Citizen Committee, and they issued a final report. Then several years later, in 25 through 18, was the TxDOT performed the Kendall County Gateway Study, and they issued a final report. And then after that report was issued, then later there's another citizen committee formed called the Kendall County Burning Fair Oaks Committee, Fair Oaks Transportation Committee, and they spent several years, had some COVID time in there as well, and they issued a final report, so citizen report. And then actually in 2023, the city, using a lot of the information that was in the latest Transportation Committee report, we did our own master plan, so it's City Mobility Master Plan, and we actually went and did a lot of traffic counts and other things and took the recommendations from the citizen committee, but then actually use that with a lot of data and metrics behind that. So here's in our roadway enhancement projects. So just quickly, this is coming out of our mobility master plans for roadways. You see we've got several check marks that are done. Things that we identified in mobility plan are done. We have a couple items that are still in progress. So Cascade Cavern widening, Adler Street widening, and Old San Antonio Road widening. So those are things that have different levels of schematic or studies underway. Not anything that we're actually out there building yet, but we're in process of studying those further. And then the next page of the mobility master plan had to do with actual intersection improvements. And so that was one of the big things that we talked about in the Kendall County Transportation Committee, is kind of the wide nodes, narrow road concept, that really improving our intersections is really the biggest bang for the buck rather than going widening roads. So of the 19 intersections that were talked about in the city's mobility plan, we actually have several of them that we're in progress of doing schematics or designs or working through trying to get intersection improvements. So a lot of them have right-of-way that we need to acquire, traffic signals or utilities that we need to relocate. A lot of these are small but very complex projects, but we're working our way. And today, as Ben mentioned, we talked 6 of them with TxDOT today, just as we were kind of working through those locations. There are several comments about the Herf Road project. So that's something for a lot of people that might have moved here recently and don't know the history of it. It was actually something that was recommended in the 05 TxDOT, and the 07 citizen studies recommended that the Herf Road project happened. So those were recommendations. So then the city kind of started some of the initial work, but it transferred to a county project. So the design of that was actually done by the county. They picked an engineer, bid it as a county, and the county actually used then they put it out as a countywide bond. So the whole county's voters voted in 11 and approved a bond to do the Herf Road project. At the time, it was a $10 million project, and that actually was what the bond amount was for, but then the project also included an additional $2.3 million that the Esperanza development provided as part of that 2008 development agreement. It was built in 2 phases. Kind of the phase 1 was from River Road to Old San Antonio. Phase 2 was from Old San Antonio to Maine. And the key part that I like to bring up or show is that project, when you're designing a big roadway system, the key thing you need to know is what the traffic volume of that roadway is. All your intersections, your road lanes, everything are based on the traffic volume of that road you're designing. So that project had an assumed traffic volume of 7,600 vehicles in 2032. So several years from now, they were expecting 7,600 cars. We just counted it last week. We have 20,900 cars in a day. So that's some of the issues you're seeing on Herf Road today. The intersection at the end of Herf Road is obviously the River Road and Herf, and that's one that was in many, many comments of the study, and that's one that we get probably the most phone calls as well. So when we did our mobility master plan, we studied all those intersections in town, and this is one of the 2 intersections that have a grade of F, just like we grade our intersections A through F, just like school as well. So this is an F, and the other one is Cascade and Scenic Loop, is our other F intersection. We have, the last several years, we prepared multiple improvement schematics and cost estimates. If you remember my first slide of the night, River Road is actually State Highway 46. So anything and everything to do with this intersection is up to TxDOT. So we've taken all these schematics and plans, and we've done a lot of stuff, and we've provided it to TxDOT over the last couple of years, trying to get them to do something. And so we've been working very closely with them on that as well. And actually, we as a city have applied for multiple grants, federal grants for this location. We haven't been able to get TxDOT to fund any projects, so we were applying for federal grants for the location as well. So back in 2022, we applied for a Safe Streets for All grant, and we used, that grant was specifically written for innovative intersection designs. So that's this picture that we have here to the right that used green tees and kind of a quadrant roadway system. That grant was unsuccessful. In 23, we applied for another grant opportunity called the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods. And we talked about that it had a lot of the drainage issues and how the number 9 trail at that location is not connected, and that there's flooding issues there as well. That grant was unsuccessful as well. But as we continue to talk with TxDOT about wanting to do something at the intersection, TxDOT has actually submitted a project in their recent call for projects, just like we submitted the sidewalk project. TxDOT has actually submitted in the call for projects a project there to do work in the existing right-of-ways. So no work outside the existing right-of-ways. It'll be just kind of doing some additional turn lanes and some other work in the right-of-ways. And so that would be, if they receive funding through that call for projects, it'd be a fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 30 project, potentially. And one of the biggest citizen comments that came through quite a bit in that citizen survey was actually an alternate path and downtown traffic relief. Came up many times, it was referenced many different ways, and are we doing anything, are we looking at anything? And so that's really, those two TxDOT studies I mentioned, both of those TxDOT studies studied this extensively. TxDOT spent several $1 million studying bypass, alternate route around town. At the time, at both of those, after the conclusion of both of those studies, our county officials voted against both of those planning studies. And so our planning efforts for any of this are on pause because TxDOT wants both a city and county to move forward together on any type of concept for an alternative route. But I would like to point out in the citizen survey, there were 86 comments in favor of an alternative path, and there were only 3 comments against an alternative path. What's next for mobility? So we are committed to using citizen input. So every one of our mobility, when we did the mobility master plan, we had multiple public open houses. When we did the thoroughfare plan, we had public open houses. When we're doing the ADA transition plan, we have online tools. We're constantly trying to get public feedback for issues. So here's the top picture is our mobility master plan, all the feedback that we had citizens come in and use our web-based portal. There's actually the MPO has a web-based portal that's open for comments right now. I know we've sent communications, we've sent that out. You can see this is a screenshot I took today. So there are some comments that our citizens have posted on Boerne area, but it's for the whole MPO boundaries. And there's going to be more public engagement opportunities. We're going to have open houses on some of our roundabouts. And as we start working on the Safe Streets for All downtown, there's going to be several opportunities. So we'd love for the public to show up and talk. Some of these open houses we've had in the past have had 5 or 6 people come to them. So we would love to have as many people come to our open houses and provide as many comments as we can. On our city website, so I try to make a little map for you here. If you go to residents and you go down to planning ahead and then you go down to mobility and transportation, that's a link that has most of these information, those planning studies I mentioned, a lot of that is all on our city website. So that's how you get to that. And so if you have any questions, if the public has any questions or council has any questions, please feel free to reach out. We can try to answer any of that. And with that, I'll see if you have any other further questions.
Questions or comments from council?
Just one
A lot of
comment.
information, Jeff. Thank you.
Just one comment. Sounds like it all comes down to TxDOT. All roads lead back to TxDOT.
When TxDOT was created, and this was a very rural area, these were farm-to-market roads, ranch roads, and it kind of created a hub-and-spoke system where all roads in the area led to Boerne. And so that's really one of the big issues we have today, is we don't have a true grid-type system. We have several bottlenecks that there's only one key spot to get from here to there. There's not 2 or 3 different ways you can go. So yes, very much is a TxDOT conversation.
You mentioned that you and Ben have been talking to TxDOT on like 4 or 5 locations. Did you get any feel for how they were looking at her 46 Esser intersection, or any movement on the plans for that moving forward?
So again, so they've submitted for federal funding. So we all think TxDOT has lots and lots of money. They have, they mentioned today how they're having some dollar issues as well. So there's only so much funding they can do. Those 2 grant applications I submitted for, one was a $17 million project and one was a $40 million project to truly fix that intersection. What TxDOT submitted for the MPO was a $4.5 million project to just add a couple turn lanes.
I want to comment quickly. TxDOT, you know better than me, but my experience is, or my opinion is, that they go where they're wanted. And they have a huge state to deal with. And if there are communities, counties, regions that don't want them or don't want their input or their money, they go elsewhere. So, I mean, you're right, they have a limited amount of funds, but they're going to go where people want to help, get things done. And we've had a problem with that. I mean, I don't know how you solve some of these problems if you never build another new road. And the only new road that's been built in over 50 years is Herf Road. So I don't know. I'm just speaking from.
I think the importance of our relationship on the MPO and how that funding happens, and as we build relationships back with TxDOT, to your point, Joe, I do think there was some, not by us, but our community, some bad blood with the Gateway study. Again, the Gateway study didn't mean there was going to be a road. It just meant we were accepting a study of how to do a road. But I do think the importance of, as I'm on that or as I move and it's someone else, the importance of that relationship is really important, and with the people in that committee, because we have to make sure they know that we do want to help move forward with some positive mobility in our community. But to fix that intersection is $40 million, so TxDOT is just trying to push that down some. But if you look at their budget, I mean, it's crazy what's out there. I mean, driving San Antonio, $1 billion project for 1604, right? So there is a lot of money, but we've had people email us, and I say, hey, reach out to the commissioners on the TxDOT board and let them know. Tell Representative Trexler, tell Senator Campbell. They have more sway over those officials than we are. Our role is to do what Jeff does with and Ben with the relationship with TxDOT and just keep doing that. But I think for anything faster, it's going to require people getting more involved and going up higher than us, in my opinion.
So a lot of information, and a lot of folks think we're not doing anything, we're sitting on our hands, but there's a lot to it, as you just saw in Jeff's brief 30-minute presentation. But the areas where you do have full control of, we're doing a lot of intentional, deliberate things. As you can see, the maintenance of our streets has gone up 10 whole points, right, in the last 5 years by the almost 250%, 300% increase in maintenance funding that we've been allocating in our budgets. That's been very intentional in our strategy to do that. And there's a lot of other things. Again, the roundabout that we're working on, the Adler bond projects, there's a lot that we are able to do, we are doing. There's always more we could do, right? So
I think that the time that things take, I assume most of us that have been on council now understand that. But, when I first got on, it was like, well, let's do that tomorrow. Well, it doesn't work like that, because there's a handbook and you got to follow this whole method. Or if you're trying to get funding, then that adds a whole nother layer. So to your point, Ben, we are doing a lot. We're doing a lot for so many things. I just think people have an expectation for things to happen quickly, and it's not how it works.
Yeah. I mean, just look at TxDOT. I mean, they did a $4.5 million project, and they're going to tell us it's not going to be done for 5 years. So, any other comments from council? All right, Ben, we're going to go back to 7A now. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, Mayor, just want to spend a moment to recognize Sharon for the last 2 years